What is going on, everybody? This is Brandon from ComixKings. Welcome everybody back to the kingdom, or welcome if this is your first time. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button upon entering this little conversation. Subscribe if you are new, because I don't know if you know, but it's been crazy. We've been putting out a lot of content, a lot of fun shows, and this is probably the most successful show, Creators Corner. And today we are joined by Ron Garney, fantastic artist in the industry, drawing Berserker, which is a book that has taken us by storm. Ron, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good. Excuse me. I'm doing good, Brandon. How are you?
I am doing well, man. You know, it's kind of crazy out there with COVID. You know, I work at a fingerprinting place, so it's weird because it's like we're in the pandemic, we're not in the pandemic, but we're trying to figure out a way through it.
It's this weird amorphous place that all of the entire world is finding itself in. I think we've traveled through another dimension on the planet, like getting hit with weird particles or something, because everything's really strange. But I really enjoyed that opening.
Yeah, my friend,
the drones look to it. It's really
good. That was the goal, man. That was the goal. My buddy who made it, he's like, "So what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Game of Thrones." I'm like, it's pretty
enough. You kept it enough your own that it's not quite play. It's more just influence,
right?
Plagiarism or anything. It's
right. As long as YouTube doesn't know that, then I'm okay. As long as you guys know it and YouTube doesn't, we are good. But just to kind of warm up the conversation, how did you get into comic books?
Lord, that's a long story. You sure you want to hear all that?
I would love. Well, maybe I don't, but I'm sure everyone here does.
Look, you know. Well, then what's my point? What are you doing?
I would love to hear it, man.
All right. Well, look, I wasn't into comics. I was into them when I was very young, and then I forgot about them. And then when I got older, I sort of rediscovered them. Accidentally, I was working as a bartender, and this mutual bartender friend had a comic behind the bar, and I opened it up, and I had been to college for illustration, and didn't know what I was really going to do with my career and my college degree and all that. So I opened it up, and I just was struck by it right away. And because of all the storytelling and the composition and the illustration and all the things you had to know. And I was really into movies and storytelling, movie storytelling. And I thought about maybe getting into directing someday even. But because I was also an artist, I saw this as a combination of both. It was an opportunity to flex all those muscles at once, really. Because when you read a comic book, it's a shorthand. It's shorthand movie, really. It's just not moving, but you try to give the illusion of it, and it's an escape. And so it was all there, and I kind of got bit by the bug right away. And I ran down to a 24-hour store, picked up some old comics because I hadn't read them since I was little, and that was it. That's really where it began. And I turned some samples in through this book called the Marvel Tryout contest. It was an oversized book. I think Mark Bagley won it. It was an oversized book where you got to try to showcase your skills, your drawing skills, your inking skills, coloring skills, and all that. And so I turned that in, and obviously I didn't win, but, it kept the fire burning under me. I wasn't going to quit. And I just kept at it till I finally, I met this guy, Mike Zeck, who happened to be the artist on Secret Wars at the time. And it turned out he lived right down the road from me. Just crazy. So I contacted him. He agreed to let me send him some of my stuff, which I did. He looked it over, called me up, seemed to like what he saw, but, gave me some pointers of what I could work on. And then over the course of maybe the next year and a half or so, I kept working on this stuff. And then he brought me into Marvel, and that was it. And here I am talking to Brandon.
Yeah, there you go. That's what everyone hopes to achieve. That's what everyone says when they come on the show. Yeah, I worked all my way up to get here. But that's awesome. Mike Zeck is phenomenal.
This is the pinnacle right here on ComixKings.
ComixKings, you are officially part of the kingdom. Officially, man. But that's awesome. Secret Wars is a fantastic story. Mike Zeck is a legend. So That's definitely a great person having your influence. Sorry to hear that you lost to Bagley, man. I know that's tough competition because his Spider-Man is legendary.
Yeah, Bagley.
To say the least.
He's a great guy, and one of the most prolific guys that
Oh
have
my God.
been, and I respect him a lot for everything he's done.
Right.
And I didn't even realize it was him until much later. I found out he was.
Oh yeah, that guy, Ultimate Spider-Man. The Ultimate Spider-Man guy, which is one of my favorite books of all time.
I don't know. It's funny is I don't know. Thank you very much, Bear Island. Who am I talking to on Bear Island?
I don't even know.
One of those reality shows, like couples or something. Bear Island, but you spell it B-A-R-E. So,
right.
Anyway.
Yeah, and to his comment, your Daredevil personally is my favorite of your work. Berserker, because I'm a huge Daredevil fan. So
Daredevil fan are right behind that.
There you go, and I have my Daredevil right behind me too. So
sweet. Yeah, honestly, that I did it with Charles Soule, and I had a gas. Charles is one of the more creative, clever guys I've gotten to work with as far as coming up with new things to think about in a story. We came up with Muse, and that was something out of my sketchbook actually, and he had so it just happened to work out really well for that character, and it's creepy, and I'm very proud proud of the job we did on that book, and artistically it's one of my favorite moments in my career because I was really hyper focused on what I wanted the book to look like. So
right, it definitely had a different feel than like your previous work. I think I read it right after I finished reading your Hulk with Mark Waid.
I didn't do a book with Mark Waid.
Was it somebody else? It was somebody else.
Come on, get with
who did that book? Who did it? Was okay, then it must have been someone else. My mistake. It must have been somebody else. But I remember reading that book and
Jenkins and John Byrne.
That must have been it.
I actually co-plotted it with Eric Larson and Jerry Ordway for
okay. That must have been it. I sincerely apologize, but that book, Daredevil, felt.
I'm out of here. See you later, everybody.
See, we haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet, but but yeah, that book was so gritty, and it was great because it was a while since we had a gritty Daredevil book, probably since Alex Maylev was on the book drawing it, but which Alex is right. Phenomenal. So personally, that was like my favorite part was the grit that was able to be captured in that Daredevil book, which is a whole new kind of like dark alley.
You're thinking of Mark because he did it. He did Daredevil before I came.
Right.
I did Captain America with.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Mark Waid did Happy Daredevil when you did gritty dark alley Daredevil.
Yeah. I can't say much about the whole dandy Daredevil bit, but. With the cane and everything. But hey, you know what? All power to him, all credit to him. You try something, you try things, and and a lot of people loved it, and that's what's important. And wasn't my sort of flavor for it, but you got to try things in this business. You can't just let things be stale. So it was a good journey. It was interesting to go down a road that nobody had ever seen before. So. That's the important thing is that you stay fresh and trying and and just do things that you think you could have fun with, and I think we were doing with that. And I didn't hurt that he had the artist working with him on that,
Chris Samney.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah,
right. But that's really how you keep the industry going these days with characters that have been around since a lot of older people were kids, since the 60s.
What do you mean by older people?
Older veterans, My dad was born in 58, so okay. I consider that old because he's my old man,
Yeah, well, that's roughly my age, so it's all good.
So that's really how you got to keep things going. Old man Ron.
Old Ron is good. Old man, I've been called that before.
Old man Ron, teaming up with Old Man Logan and Old Man Quill in the next series or the next podcast.
People were trying to get me to play Cable in the X-Men movies or something years ago. They had tagged me in a post to I forgot who the director was, one of those movies, but they say Ron Garney would be great as Cable. And I'm like, that would have been fun, but
Yeah, you technically would have been Sophie Turner's son.
Is that how?
In that case, is that how it works? I think that should be how it works, right? Technically, Jean Grey's son. But
Yeah.
speaking of things that never been done before, how did a Berserker kind of land in your lap? Segue into that.
That was a very, another sort of serendipitous thing. I was, because of COVID, Juggernaut was on hiatus, and I kind of planned on that being my last book for Marvel for because I wanted to move on and try other avenues and do other things. And I was getting real burnt out on regular scheduling, and and I've been doing this for over almost 35 years, and so I while I was working on my last issue of Juggernaut, I got an email from Boom Studios, and somebody who I followed me on Facebook, and I followed them back. This guy Philippe, I think it was, and he asked me, what my availability was, and I said, well, just so happens I'm finishing up my last issue of Juggernaut. After that, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I don't plan on getting involved in another regular title or book. I kind of want to do my own thing and do art, but I wasn't sure. I just needed time to figure it out, And so they said, well, can we give you a call at least? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Give me a call. So they called me up, and I really wasn't planning on anything, but I figured maybe I would do a cover for them or something. But so they said, we're doing this book with Keanu Reeves. And I was like, okay, the actor, the big movie star Keanu, who doesn't know who he is, And they said, he really loves your work. And I'm like, get out of here. I'm like, okay.
Someone's pulling my leg, right?
Like, well, because I just thought it was just a thing where he was branding something, like he was putting his name on, just selling his name for the title. It was his character, but he wasn't gonna have much to do with it. But wasn't sure. But I was like, well, that's nice to hear, but I didn't hear that from him. So he's, so I don't know. They're like, well, can we do a Zoom meeting or something? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll be happy to talk to you. And but I'm not making any promises. I was really burnt out. And so day comes, I'm supposed to do them a Zoom meeting, and I press the button, and look who's staring at me, just like you are. It's Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves. Hope we look the same, right?
And the other guy's from Boom. So I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? What's up, And he's like, Ron, And so we talked for a bit and gave each other kind of a virtual hug, and I let them know a couple days later I would do it, because how am I going to say no to the guy, So, and it wasn't just that. I mean, it sounded intriguing to me. I mean, I like those kinds of characters, and it sounded very epic. It was just something I really couldn't pass up, obviously. One, the fact of working with him and Boom and, and Matt Kent, who I'd never really heard of Matt before, but once I researched it, I see he was,
right,
all these cool things going on. And what he's doing with Keanu and the writing aspect of it is really cool. And they have a pretty good working relationship together. And then we all started talking, and we've done interviews and stuff together. And it's been great. I've talked with Keanu a few times, ourselves, and but it's been nothing but a lot of fun for the most part. And it's 12 issues, and we're about 6 in. I finished my 5th, so I'm starting on the 6th. So we got about another year to go.
There you go. So hopefully you can hold out that burnout for another year or two.
Yeah, it's tough. I tell people, I told them it's tough. I mean, I've been doing it so long, but it's things people don't remember is that you're just here working on that one thing while everybody else is out doing multitudes of other projects, and,
right.
Keanu's out filming John Wick 4, and Matt's doing like 3 or 4 different books, and I'm with this. And so my focus is hyper focused on Berserker, so we haven't spoken in a bit. But I love the story, the story's been great. Boom's been great. And it's going to be made into a movie, and an anime series.
Right, and hopefully they can match your style of grit that has been in this book, because that is really what's made the book for me, is really just your art and how clean and how
I appreciate
gritty, how bloody it is at the same. It is extremely
Well, yeah,
bloody.
it's funny because coming from Marvel, I was hesitant because with Marvel you have to tone it back a little bit,
Right, right, right.
more of a code about that kind of thing. And then so when I started working on it, Keanu, said to me, he's like, "Hey man, can we up the violence?" I'm like, "Oh, good. You mean I can do that?" And I'm like, "Okay, fine." And so I just went full bore and just every eyeball and intestine I could slip in there, I slipped in there. It's a little gory. I mean, I guess I've become sort of desensitized
Little.
to all the violence, because of you know horses and
Yeah, it's like you're drawing horses, you're drawing a horse
or
like snout going down someone's throat. Every other page is, if there's a page where someone's not getting their chest ripped open, I'm surprised. I kind of kind of count your blessings there, but
well, I'm used to it. I mean, I've always done gritty characters,
right,
but I've had
most of
experience.
the time.
So it's always fun. I mean, to try to pull it off. There was a scene where when Berserker was a little boy and he's jumping from horse to horse, doing all these things in tandem. Like this sort of choreographed thing where he jumps up and puts a spear through a horse and a guy at the same time, and then he rips off a horse's head or rips a guy in half on the way down, and all these things are happening. So it's a challenge, and it's an interesting one to make it come to life and play out for the viewer.
Right.
And so far it's been pretty. I've gotten a good feedback from it. I mean, people seem to really love what I'm doing, so that's always good.
Right. I mean, it's something we've never really seen before in a comic where you see this level of blood and violence and gore. I mean, we saw the Invincible show, and this is making that look like a petting zoo. So,
yeah, it's funny. I remember seeing Saving Private Ryan when it came out back in the '90s, and I couldn't believe. I mean, we've seen gory movies and stuff, but the realism of that was so shocking. Like what these people actually went through, and this is just fantasy. So you have to keep that in your head that this is real. Because
right, it's
people have been through some gory stuff in history. So
right.
Anyway.
Right. And this kind of plays on a little bit of history, more like a little bit of historical fiction, kind of with a lot of tribes.
Yeah.
How much research did you really have to do for this project? Did you have to go back and take some anatomy classes or kind of relearn that, or
I've been doing
you just go for it? You've been doing it for a while.
I mean, anatomy is not too much of a problem for me. It's probably one of my stronger suits, maybe, but as far as the research, that was more towards coming up with none of the tribes really exist in there, but they're sort of a conglomeration of different things I've seen, and looked at and researched and trying to come up with, because this is 80,000 years ago, and there's, tribes that, people think existed like Atlantis or, or things like that. And we were trying to go for that. Like, this is a tribe that could have existed, so we're just kind of going for a look and a feel, but nothing, it's not like these are directly, something you can actually research as a real tribe that ever existed. So,
right, kind of just like what we kind of know of, or like kind of what we see in the history books.
Yeah, later in the last interview, we touch on some of that where Berserker goes through some time periods, and kind of real people from real tribes and things like that. So.
Right. Now, we've been talking a lot about your artwork and kind of how you kind of managed to get a hold of this project. But if you were to pitch this to anyone who is not reading Berserker, a question we probably should have started with, what would be your pitch?
Oh my God.
What would you say to someone to get them to read this book?
I would say, imagine Keanu with lightning coming out of his eyes and never being able to die. And, but he wants to die. I would pitch it the same way Keanu probably did, because that is there's a lot of angst that goes along with being immortal that people, we sort of take it for granted. Everybody wants to live forever, but do you really want to live forever? And
right.
The other part of that is what he was created for. He's created to be an engine of destruction, and it's in his. It's just what he was created to be. He was born of a god, basically, and so as he goes along, the awareness starts to come to him that that's all he is that he's just this thing that's created to kill everything, and so we start to see, that there's more to him than that. I mean, we all question what we are when we're young. As we're getting older, what's our purpose? And this poor kid, I mean, he grows very fast, as you know.
Right.
He started growing very fast. And so within 2 years, he was, like a teenager or whatever, as far as I recall. So anyway, so he's, he's created for that. And, imagine being somebody who's just created just to rip horses' heads off and destroy people. And, and then the problem is his stepfather, or his mother's husband there, starts to use him, to protect the tribe. But then he gets corrupted by Berserker's power. And so he, starts to use Berserker, and he starts just slaughtering all these innocent people in these tribes. And the stepfather's point of view is that, well, if we don't do it to them, they're going to do it to us anyway. So, and he becomes this conqueror. And, interestingly, Berserker has sort of starts to have a moral dilemma with that. And then I don't know how much people have read of it, but I don't want to give too much away. It involves his mother and all these things. And there's all kinds of layers to this, because it goes back and forth in time. We're, in the current present time, like when he jumps out of the helicopter, and he's working for the military, and he's being studied by this outfit, this real science fiction angle to it. So it's interesting to jump back and forth and see how this unfolds, because he wants to die, wants to be able to die. He doesn't want to die right away, but he wants to be able to.
Right. He wants to have like those human capabilities that everyone else does.
Right. So, and through that, his life, takes on, probably through any of our lives take on meaning because we die, and so, and I think if you're immortal, I think you can, I think we would lose our souls ultimately,
Right.
If you were just lived forever, you would take so much for granted that, it probably wouldn't be a very good existence.
Right.
And so all these things, that the fact that things are so finite, it gives meaning to things in our lives, and our children and everything else, so, and our families.
Right. And a lot of times we know that time is precious,
Exactly.
Right. So a lot of times, like, we take things for granted, even if it's like, you hear stories all the time where like recently, like in October, I had a friend who passed in a car accident who was my age. I grew up with her for years,
That's terrible.
but we ended like high school together on bad terms. So we didn't like keep in contact for like 3 years. And then she's on the news, right? So you never really know where that's going to go, where life is going to take certain people, right? And I guess like if you're immortal, you kind of lose sense of that time, of kind of like the valuable lessons, like
right.
the stuff that makes us human, in a sense.
Right. Absolutely right. You lose a sense of how to put value on things. Everything
Right.
is, there's a yin and yang to everything. I mean, what makes things important is the finiteness of them, and what gives them value, is that you have a limited amount of time, and,
Right.
So, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your friend.
It's all good, there have been charities all throughout like the neighborhood and everything for like the past year.
Oh, it was a car accident, you said?
Yeah, it was a car accident with her friend. And I guess like he was either texting or he was drinking, and they were driving. It was one of the two, but they hit a curve.
The texting is bad. Anybody out there, stop texting and driving.
Right.
And how many people beep that myself on the road, and
Right.
It's always girls, but they're always like this, and their car starts swerving, and not always girls, but most of them.
Right.
And this guy was swerving in and out. And I look, and he's like looking at his phone and trying to drive. I'm like, come on, man, you're gonna kill someone.
That happened to me today. Someone ran a red light, and I had a green light, and he almost if I didn't see it, he was on his phone when he went to turn. I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, it was
topic here.
Yeah, we are getting very much off topic. We're here to talk about comic books, not real life. But So what does the future hold for Berserker? He's in the military. We haven't really seen much of his military kind of relationships. If there's anything kind of that you're working on that you know is in the works, could you speak about that?
Well, I'm working. You mean in Berserker?
In Berserker.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give anything away because it's that you don't want to spoil.
Right. All right.
No. But I will say that I've noticed some people, oh, we're getting bored with the story or whatever. It's just it's being drawn out. But listen, have patience, people. Have patience. That's we live in a society probably where there's too many commercials on TV and it shortens our attention spans. But be patient. It's great stuff. This last issue I just finished, there's some cool stuff going on. There's always setups happening for
right.
other things unfolding. We just finished the first arc. We're moving into the second.
Right. For me personally, when I'm looking at a story, I always look for like those character moments that I know will be exploited later, like
Right.
where we left off with issue 4 with the kind of the doctor, the research doctor, kind of their relationship that was set up in the first 2 issues, where she was kind of on the fence about using him as an experiment. There's still a lot of stuff that we have to know about his past, which he's lived forever. So there's a lot of story to tell.
Yes. You know what? Sorry. I didn't realize I didn't have the comments clicked on, so I didn't see all these comments. Hey guys, missing link, Chamorro Cinema.
That's who made that's the guy who made the intro.
Okay, gotcha. Very good stuff, man. So sorry I didn't see the comments, but
yeah. If you guys do have a question for Ron, make sure you ask it, because I'm sure he will be more than happy to answer all of your questions.
Missing link, HK Wifey 420. That's four broken hearts. That must be about your friend.
Yeah.
Thank you, Missing Link, about the Weapon X series. I appreciate it. That was a lot of fun to it. Working with Jason was great. He's an extraordinary writer.
Yes.
And no, I don't have any sightings, UFO signings coming up in Colorado, but I would love to go there and do one sometime. So for sure. So anyway.
There you go. But yeah, like we were talking about, that's kind of what I like to see in a book. It's kind of moments that I know get exploited. This guy's immortal, so we're going to see him forever. There are a lot of stories. I always feel like what I personally like about Star Wars, is a little off topic, is that because it takes place over a long span of time, there's so many years you can fill in the gaps, right? Yeah. Which Marvel's kind of going back and doing, and kind of feel that way about Berserker, is it has kind of that timetable where you can pick a moment in this character's life and go back and tell those stories.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You right. Can just, if he's 80,000 years old, there's really no limit. So even if other writers eventually came along and wanted to take a stab at that, would be interesting too. Because with each person that comes along, there's different imagination there. And I know Keanu, as far as the artwork and stuff, he's a fan of artwork too. And I think he, like in the animated series, he's anxious to see what an anime style would look like with this character, and so.
Right. How much freedom does he give you over the scripts, or kind of like how you react to them, or do your layouts?
It's sort of back and forth. I mean, they, him and Matt, like Matt's a bit of an artist. He's an artist, he draws himself. So he'll put some suggestions in, and I'll take it, and if I like it, I'll leave it. If not, I'll try something else. They'll give me. They might say, "Hey, I'm looking for something, sort of dreamy. Can we, something in this sequence?" And there was a scene I just did where I don't want to give it away, but there's music involved, and so I came up with this sort of layout with stanzas and music going through the panels, and and it worked out pretty good. But there's suggestions, they had this idea for a few double spreads. And they were like, if you can come up with something, let me know, I'd like to, other ideas. But I looked at them like, no, this works fine. I like it, so I jazzed it up, made it a little more handsome than what was laid out there. But, it's all good, because at the end of the day, you want this to be the best product. You want everybody to be happy, of course. That's part of my job, is to, convey the story And these guys are working, Keanu and Matt have worked pretty tightly before I got involved as far as what they wanted to see, what the vision was for it. I came on the project late. At first there was another artist on it at first, and then something happened there, and then that's when I came on board.
Right.
So so they had this vision, and it's I always respect the writers and what they want have in their heads, because that's their thing. As long as they respect mine, what I want to do in certain spots. When it comes to the storytelling, there's things that I'll throw in, and if they think it's it doesn't really work, actually there was one thing where there was a record player and I used an old needle, one of the old 78 RPM needles, because I thought they made recreations of those, but I guess they don't. But I thought they did. But they do make 78 RPMs that you can play 45s on, or they make recreations of those turntables, but not the needle, not
right?
The heavy needles. I thought they had lighter versions of it, but they don't. So either Matt or Keanu mentioned that to me. I'm like, oh, okay. So I changed that to something else. But so it's always a collaboration back and forth. Little things, little details like that are important. Storytelling things, but for the most part, it's been a pretty smoothly running engine.
Right. And that's always great to have, is that good working relationship, make the book look the best as possible.
For sure. There was things like, Matt had given me a layout a few issues ago and he wanted more and I put in less because I didn't think it worked. So it's, ultimately it's always for the best interest of, to service the story and the art and the character, so
right.
That's all you have to pay attention to.
Right. I would love to know all about those reference photos that Keanu probably sent you. Or do you
I don't use reference.
You don't use them all. You just went back and saw all the John Wick movies. You're like, okay, that.
No, he and I Skyped a few times together, and talked, and while we're talking and joking around, whatever, I was studying his face unbeknownst to him. I was just looking at him, and just studying the cross section of his face, how his eyes, he's got these eyes that kind of, they do this thing, and so I just kept those things in my head because I didn't want to reference him in photos, because when you start referencing photos, it starts to look like you copied from a photograph. And so what I wanted to do is make this character come to life. And the only way to do that is if you don't use photos, interestingly. So he needs to have his own. In other words, I'm sort of almost responsible for acting the character out as well,
Right.
These are the words and stuff, but I have to sort of act them out. And the only way I can make him come to life on his own and create his own identity is if I'm not copying photos of this human being who exists.
Right. And make it
kind doesn't exist.
Real.
I'm trying to get this feeling of this character, where it resembles Keanu, obviously, and he can play him, but I want Berserker to sort of live on his own a little bit. Obviously with respect to Keanu, and make it look like him, but
too much, not like identical twins.
Just let my own artistic sensibility come through without referencing it. Right. That way it kind of creates its own identity a little bit,
Right. Has that kind of been like your biggest challenge, so to speak, with this book?
No, honestly, it's been pretty easy to draw him. He's got a very symmetrical sort of face, so there's times when I just draw what comes to me, and I have that in my head, that what I looked at on his face when I was talking to him and stuff, and it's funny because sometimes it comes out looking exactly like him, and other times it's got its own sort of feel to it. So it's starting to meld together really well, my sensibilities and my experience in him, and coming up with this Berserker guy, so yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge, but not too bad because he's easy to draw. So the challenge really is just all the different things they want in there.
Right.
Hey, what's up, Canadian Geek?
He's the one who makes all of my graphics for the Creators Corner. So
all right, nice.
Big shout out to him.
What did he ask me?
He says, please do a sequel to Man of Wrath.
Oh, okay, yeah. It says do a squeal
sequel.
Man of Wrath. Man of Wrath. There you go. There's your squeal, dude. Yeah, we had talked about doing something maybe down the road, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. That book, actually, Keanu said to me, it was funny because he goes, "Oh, I read Men of Wrath," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, what did you think?" He goes, "It's really violent." And I'm like, if you think it's violent, then it must be bad because that mother ever is just doing nothing but violent stuff. And in this book in particular, I mean, come on. So I thought it was funny when he said that, but
it's kind of ironic.
yeah, Keanu telling me it's really violent. Yeah, it's violent.
That means it's good in his book, you know what I mean?
So yeah, but it was supposed to be a TV show. We got it picked up by a few different offers, and then it was going to be made by USA Network, and then that fell through because of the Harvey Weinstein thing. The Me Too movement, and everything was anti-man at that point, anti-male, in the culture. So, and it was called Men of Wrath, and so I didn't want anything to say men on it,
Well, they didn't want anything to say Man of Wrath. I think that was just the biggest.
No, not men. And it's kind of ridiculous, but hey, that's the way things go. And then we had another thing being worked out with Paramount. They picked it up, and then they ultimately passed on it for whatever reason. I'm not even sure, but that was supposed to be, by now it would have been in production. But a lot of it was COVID too this year. So
right.
COVID sort of put a wrench into everything.
Right.
Made people change their, the companies were changing their formats to work with streaming services, and so that's kind of what happened. So it's just there. I don't know if anything will ever happen with it. They actually asked us if we wanted to change it to Women of Wrath. We were like, no, it's Men of Wrath,
Right. And then earlier we were kind of speaking about Juggernaut with that was written by Fabian Nicieza, of course, your artwork, which was a super fun book, kind of telling the story of Juggernaut, which was a fantastic book. If you want to talk about that for a little bit for us.
Yeah, I loved working with Fabian. He was an old comrade of mine from when I started my career. We went to Tijuana together, when I first met him, and with a bunch of guys, and that was quite a night. But we've, known each other for a long time. So when they asked me about it, I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to work with Fabian. And it was a gas. I loved working with him. He's very accessible, talks to you all the time, and is there to give you, the support you need, or the enthusiasm, the encouragement. There's a lot of writers now who, well, I don't know about a lot of writers, but I've worked with writers who really aren't all that encouraging. They don't say much. And so you question, and when you're spending this much time in, a room working on something, you'd like to hear that they like what you're doing, but I've been doing it so long, I don't really need that, but it's fun to talk to the people.
Right. Right. It's always good to have kind of that extra push to keep it going, keep it.
Yeah, it's just, again, like I said, I can't stress enough how isolating this is. I'm just in this room all the time, and I don't even get to spend as much time with my kids as I'd like to, because this, this requires, it's a deadline thing, and it's,
right.
So, it's nice to have access to the, to people. And that's the one thing I will say I enjoy about Instagram or something like that, is that, you can put something on there and it's sort of like performance. If I put a piece of what I'm working on Instagram, it's like playing guitar in front of a crowd, you get feedback, and, well, that's great, and that's something we never got to experience in this career, in this industry. We were all just working in rooms, no access to the fans, no access to the outside world so much. Now we have things like Instagram and other social media, and that's the upside of social media, because there's a lot of screwy things about it too, but that's a wonderful benefit for us as artists.
Right. And also one thing that I've noticed, talking with other artists, is it gets people excited for what's to come. Is when you're putting a little teaser, it keeps people wanting more. And then It's great because people are your biggest network, right? Especially with social media. Everyone.
And people like to see what your commissions. Like I just posted this little commission book I was working on.
Right. Look dope, man.
And so I got another one I'm working on. You can't really see it, but speaking of it looking like Keanu, there you go.
There you go.
So
that's dope, man. That's awesome.
Thanks. So people get to see those things in progress, and it's not and I think they appreciate the accessibility of us, and we appreciate the accessibility, and they're more the enthusiasm than anything. And that's the one thing I love about meeting fans at conventions and stuff, because I don't do them too often anymore. But it's great meeting all you guys, and they walk over and and they just are a real breath of fresh air for the most part. So it's great,
Right. A lot of times fans forget that you guys are just as much of a fan of the industry as they are.
Well,
that's how we all started.
We are beforehand for the most part. I mean, you work in it so much. It's funny because I don't spend a lot of time on it after I'm done working, because I have other things I'm interested in or whatever, or my family. Got to go watch my kids play sports or do whatever they're doing, and spend time with them. So I don't spend a whole lot of time on comics after this, so I don't know what's everybody's working on unless I see it on Instagram or whatever, and I don't get to the comic shop to look at them. But we still love the medium itself, the craft of creating a comic book, and it's become a huge thing. I mean, it's not like it was, I mean, honestly, comics have sort of, in a way, are sort of supplanting and equalizing towards music a little bit. I feel like, because of the movies and everything else. I see so many more people identifying with comic books, and even though the readership isn't there, I still think a lot more people recognize the characters
and appreciate kind of the art, right? Even if they're not reading comics. Nowadays, you say, hey, I'm a comic fan. It's not, okay, she's walking away to the next dude down the road. I mean, especially if, there's a Marvel movie coming out the next week or something.
Yeah. It hasn't helped the readership a whole lot, but it's definitely helped, people kind of more household names, these
right. It kind of allows people to be more accessible to comics.
Right.
I feel like a lot of times today in the medium, people are leaning more towards what's on the outside of the page or more of the $ value than what's on the interiors of the page. Kind of what we were talking about earlier with the patience.
Yeah. No, that's true. Well, part of that too is because of what icons the characters have become. It used to be Mickey Mouse, but people identify Spider-Man as just as much of a brand at this point as Mickey Mouse was, or and Superman, and they're household sort of names, and they have that kind of brand value to them now. So, and because of that, there's more. The money comes into it more than it used to.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Any more questions?
I'm sure we can think of something. If you were to go back kind of to finish a project or to return to a character, who would that be?
Station Dank. What does that mean?
Oh, so Station is like a bit from Bill and Ted. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Bill and Ted 3. I don't know. I've never seen it. It's kind of become like an inside joke kind of in the kind of YouTube comic book community. Everyone says Station to each other.
Okay, gotcha.
It means like be excellent, be well to each other. It was funny. Trish Forstner is doing Stray Dogs was on a show, one of their shows actually. I think it was this guy. It was his show, and she recognized the saying Station, and it was kind of funny to everyone. So
gotcha. Hey, hip hops and me. Oh, Spack. You do jujitsu, buddy? Me. Oh,
I know a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I actually taught karate for 5 years.
Oh, good.
And we did a little bit of jiu-jitsu, learn a little bit from like guest instructors that would come in a little bit. Obviously, like if we were doing something for the students, kind of doing like a jiu-jitsu day, obviously we had to know a basic level. But I know you're a martial artist as well.
Yeah. I'm a first degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. I had a little school for a while. I don't anymore. But that was a lot of fun. I've been doing it for quite a while, and it's it's a real eye-opening martial art.
Right.
That way, you know,
Right.
you learn that what things can actually happen in a real situation, you know, with jujitsu. So, you
Right.
know, you can make people unconscious. You can break their arms, choke them, you know. So
Right.
it's a real eye-opening experience, and you know, and especially if you're somebody who comes from a striking background, to have somebody be able to take you down at will and just stifle that instantly is an eye-opener. So.
Right. Martial arts is always, it's a lifestyle. You know, it's to me, it's more about kind of like that self-defense, kind of what you can do to a person, but it's more like, yeah, I can do this to a person, but am I going to? How can I kind of use that as a last resort? How can I use it to kind of discipline my life and to prioritize how I want to live my life? That's really something.
It helps in that regard for sure. It helps discipline you. You know, I teach my kids the same thing, you know,
Right.
because it requires that a certain kind of focus, and it requires you to mentally, you know, put things in order to get better at it.
Right.
Yeah, congratulations, you know,
on the purple belt.
You're working towards your purple belt. That's amazing.
There you go. There you go.
You get to that point, you know, it's like then, you know, things start to really settle in and you start to get it. You know?
Right. Right. I remember I always taught my white belts before I teach them a kick, a block, or punch, just to hold their hands out and yell stop as loud as they could. Because that's honestly the most important lesson. And yeah, like that. Just perfect. You passed. Yeah, now I can teach you how to kick some ass.
Your hands like this makes a big difference. You know?
Right. Just keeping your hands and your eyes active, really.
Prayer position.
And you know, that's really good.
A UFC fighter, Tyrone Woodley, and he was having a little altercation with that other fighter. I forgot his name off the top of my head, a French guy. But Tyrone was just standing there the whole time like this, you know, because it psychologically can diffuse a situation, but at the same time, you also have the ability to protect yourself.
Right.
But it's also, people identify this with peace, you know, for the most part.
Right.
It's also a very defensive sort of posture to take. So, you know, safer posture than having it down here where you can get clogged. You know.
Right.
So, anyway.
Right. Eye contact is another thing in martial arts that is found to be very, very important down the line. Something that I used to teach a lot. I can't teach anymore. My hips, they're a mess.
How old are you? You look like
I'm 20, but I've had quite a few.
You look pretty young. You're having hip problems.
I've had 4 hip surgeries. I just had my 4th hip surgery a month ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I hear it. I have a titanium shoulder in this shoulder.
Dang, man. Look at us. Steve, your ego will come once you win your first tournament. Then you'll think you can kick ass, and then someone's going to know more than you.
Some people don't want to compete, and that's fine. Not everybody should. I would recommend trying it, you know, because it gives you a heightened awareness of things. You know, there's a line in 300, I think it's 300, and the guy's narrating, he says a heightened sense of things when you're in danger, and when you compete, it's kind of like that, you know, because you're going out there, it's like a coliseum sort of environment. You're not going to die, obviously, but it's a different animal when you go out there in front of all those people and you know there's somebody there that you don't know anything about their game, don't know anything about, you know, how good they are, whatever, you know, you just don't know anything. So the unknown is always freaky.
Right.
And that's what death is. And, you know, when these guys used to go out in the gladiator times and they knew they were going to die, it was, you know, the heightened sense of awareness of life is, and you've experienced that even in a competition setting.
Right.
And so I would recommend it. However, I do agree with you that the egos, I've seen some people, you know, they start competing and winning and their egos just
and then they're the best.
Run away with them, you know, obnoxious, and it's just, well, you know, not that they're not good people,
right?
But you know,
they get cocky, right? They get cocky. I remember my first tournament. This dude was warming up doing a backflip, like he's just stood there doing backflips. So I'm like, dude calls his name. I'm like, oh, that one. Okay, great. So I walk in the ring, right? We bow, hands up. He takes 2 steps back, and he does a round, like a aerial, right?
Yeah.
And when his back leg's coming up, it lands and comes right across the side of my face. And I was like, ooh. I was like, that was my first tournament.
You just never know.
I was like,
no. My first tournament, the guy who beat me was a fourth stripe blue belt, ready for his purple, and I was already a purple. And he just a stupid, more power to him. It was just a dumb thing, He was trying to pass his guard, and I stood up and I tripped, or he swept, like kicked my foot out, and then I fell back and he jumped on top of me, and the match was over. He won. So you got to be careful. You never know. I mean, he was still pretty good.
Right. It's always fun.
It's always sweep or something. I don't really remember, but
right. It's always fun to go back and look at your old fighting videos, just kind of like see where you started and where you made it.
Yeah.
I remember I used to be all defense, and then I ended up using my legs more. And then once I had my surgeries, I had my first 2 surgeries, and I decided, hey, let me compete again. 3-4 months after the second one, I tore my hip in 4 places, and then 2 on the other. I had 2 overgrown bones, which I didn't feel because like I used to play hockey as well, so like I was all legs. It's growing.
Yeah, stand up. Let me see you throw a kick.
I have no space over here, man. You know what? If I can lift my leg that high anymore, but yeah, you can buy me a new computer, right? But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so I ended up doing all hands that tournament, and I ended up winning. And that was the first time. It was my first time back to karate in a year. It was the first time I've ever fought using hands. And I ended up winning the whole damn thing. The only person I kicked was some dude who just started dating a girl that I broke up with, and I was like, okay. And she was right there the whole time, and I was like, if I'm gonna kick someone, it's gonna be this guy, right across the face.
You had more incentive in that one. I did a little tournament back when I was in high school. It was an in-school tournament, and I beat this kid just by throwing a kick to the face. It was, he came in and just threw the kick up, and that was it. I got the points in the last second. So it was like the Karate Kid. Been working in my black belt and Tai Chi. Keep getting my butt kicked in tournaments. Can't figure out why.
It's your mindset.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. That actually you're in better shape when you're getting beat, because it's going to make you. The people who are always winning sometimes get complacent.
Right.
People who are losing are constantly being forced to look at their game and figure out what it is they're doing wrong, and they grow more actually from the loss than they do the win. So don't even worry about it. Just keep pushing forward and keep competing if you want.
Matt, you're going to lose for a while, man, before you win. But you just got to keep going.
Not a joke. What's not a joke?
Oh, station. Like when we say station, it's more of a greeting. That was what that was a reference to.
Okay. It's like aloha. Okay. Good.
Right. But yeah, Matt, keep with it, man. You're gonna lose a lot. You're gonna lose a lot, which is where all the lessons are. Figure out what they did to you, use it on someone else. Or try to work on it, also losing some mindset. I think a lot of fights it's a mind game. It's like playing chess. At the end of the day.
Jiu-jitsu definitely is,
right.
Because you have to be ahead of the other guy.
Right.
Because jiu-jitsu is like moves. Like you have to plan your move a step ahead of them. And once you build momentum, it's hard for them to catch up if you're good at it. But if you get caught behind where you're always playing defense and they're always one step ahead of you, it's really difficult. But it's all about parrying and countering each move.
Right.
Everything is linked together, and you can find openings and find ways to turn the momentum to your advantage. And I think there's some guys who last guy I competed against, that's all he did. He was a world champion, great guy. I became good friend. Interestingly, the Keanureeves thing. When Keanu and I were talking, this guy who I competed against, who we became good friends, he texted me and said, "Hey, tell Kiki I said hello." I'm like, okay. So I told Keanu that, and he's like, "Oh," and he got a text from the same guy. And so we both knew this guy, because this guy owns the security guard agency that hired out for his security guards for John Wick. So it was
dang, man.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's
and
dope.
then the guy who I first started training with, this guy Renato, Migliaccio. He lives out in California now. And then there's other guys that he was at this school out in North Haven here with Andrew Calandrelli's school. And, it's called Ultimate MMA at that time. But I met him, and he is out in California now, and he was teaching judo to some of Keanu's stuntmen. So it's just, and they were training at the same gym that Keanu was training out in California. So it's just an interesting, circle.
Right. It's a small world, man. It's a small world.
It's pretty cool. So,
are you still practicing jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I honestly, yes, but I haven't in a while. I mean, one, because of COVID, but two, my schedule.
Right.
Once this Keanu, this book thing happened, it really started swallowing up a lot of my time. And so, and I am getting older. I'm 58, going on 59, and I've got a lot of joint issues myself.
Right.
I've had 2 knee surgeries, I've had a shoulder replacement surgery, just had a hernia operation like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I actually even had a stent put in my heart. So that was just a freak accident. So, I've had a lot happen to me over the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So not to me, but I had a lot done, but the knee operations were a while back. So it's, it gets harder and harder to do that kind of training.
Right.
And I have to take it real easy because I don't want to get,
you don't want to re-injure.
Go through another operation at my age, and I have to keep getting stuff done. You go under the anesthesia, and it's not good.
Right.
So I have to take it a little easier. I hate to say that. I hate to admit it. We all do. It's a bitter pill, because I still want to be, young and
right,
and all that. But so I have to pace myself at this point.
Right.
Kids, it takes a lot of time out of my day. That was the biggest thing when I had the jiu-jitsu school, is I would, take out 4 hours out of my workday, going to open it, train other people, get home, half hour, it takes a half hour to get there, so I had to give it up. Right.
Not everything's meant to last, but at least the lessons from jiu-jitsu and kind of like that lifestyle that we were talking about earlier, that stays with you.
Right? Yeah.
That's what it's all about, right? And if you ever do need those moves, you can recall it like that. If you ever need it, God forbid, hopefully you won't need to, but that's also the beauty.
When you get to black, especially in jiu-jitsu, because it takes, karate is more like a 5-6 years, I think. Right. But with jiu-jitsu, it takes up to 15 to get your black belt. It's a much longer journey. So by that time, the muscle memory is pretty good.
Right.
I could, I could still sit down and throw up a triangle or a renegade choke or a Kimura, pretty easily. But it's more the movements, the constant moving that you have to kickstart your muscle.
Right.
And there's the athletic part of it. So
right. Unfortunately, I can't be doing karate anymore, which I just learned recently. So
that's and everything. Yeah, it's terrible. Maybe you should. What are you going to get into? Maybe you could be an actor, a movie star. You got movie star qualities to you.
I mean, a movie star. Maybe an internship would be great, right? I'm just kidding.
That's the last thing that dude wants, is me to be bugging him about other people.
Right. No, I mean, I play basketball pretty frequently, so that's always fun. And then just reading and doing this is where I have fun. Going to the gym, so I make up for it.
Don't worry, Matt. It's okay. You said you don't compete in tournaments.
It's all right. I would recommend doing it once. If it's not your thing, no worries. Your sparring class is great as well.
He doesn't have belts. Yeah, I was wondering about that when he said Tai Chi. I was like, Tai Chi has that kind of. I didn't think it had a ranking system. Yeah, and that's what I thought. I meant to repeat. So when he said, I'm like, because I knew a guy who was actually an anchor who worked for DC. His name was Dennis Jenke. He said he did a martial art called Tai Chi, and I knew of Tai Chi, but I never thought of it as much, because it's not so fighting related. It's more peaceful sort of meditation thing.
Right.
But thank you very much, Dank. I would love to say you look young as hell too, but I can't see you. So
he looks pretty young. He looks pretty young. Dank is the man. But anyway, Ron.
Hey, Gotham Geek Girl, what's up, girl? Good to see you.
Yeah, she's awesome.
I like your Instagram page a lot. I enjoy
Yeah, she's always throwing up reels at Midtown, which is fantastic. Always like taking New York by storm. It's great. But what else do you have to say about a Berserker? I know issue 5 will be hitting the shelves soon. If you want to do a little teaser for that before we head out.
Well, it's again, it's a sort of we're starting a new arc, after all this violence of the, this last arc and stuff. So this one kind of starts going down a little bit of a different direction. It starts to become a little more sci-fi. We're a little more spiritual in some ways. But again, so that's the beauty of it, is that you're going to get to read something completely, and come down a new avenue now with this character that we haven't seen yet. The first part was more of a real introduction, and we really needed to push the violence to just show, you really have to show and drive that point home. And you can't just do it in one issue, because then it's just violent candy, candy violence. If you want it to mean something, you got to keep doing it over and over again to show, like, wow, this is like seriously violent and there's a reason for it. And now we're starting to peel back the onion a little bit, starting to get to the center of it, and it starts down that road in this next arc. So a little romance in there, maybe seemingly, and so I'm trying to think if there's anything I could show you that won't give anything away, but I don't think so. So I'm not going to do that.
There you go. There's a beautiful, beautiful picture of Berserker behind you that people can look at. But anyway, Ron, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a blast. You are welcome back anytime. We are always talking about Berserker on our weekly wrap-up show on Fridays, so you guys can look forward to that tomorrow. Creators Corner, I do have a next guest lined up. Ron V will be on the show around the last 2-3 days of August. Still working that out, but he will be on the show, which is fantastic. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. It means a lot, you guys, really, for real. This has been by far the most successful show and probably my favorite show, because it's just great to get to talk to all these different creators, get to know their stories and what they're working on, and promote that, kind of get the word out there. So, Ron, thank you again so much.
A great opening, great title of your show, ComixKings. I like that. And it's been a gas, and I really enjoyed talking to all you guys on there. So hopefully I'll get to see you again soon. If I knew you by your first names, other than Matt and Hip Hop and Goth and Beat Girl, I know her. So great to talk to you all. I appreciate it.
No problem, you guys. Take care. Have a good one. Make sure you guys stay safe out there.
All right.